This is The Long Road to Publishing, the podcast where we hear from authors who have traveled a long and bumpy road to publishing their books. Whether you're just starting out on your own writing and publishing journey, or if you're all too aware of the many possible detours along the way, this podcast is for you. I'm your host, Eva Langston, author, writing instructor, and creator of Eva's newsletter for writers on Substack. Thank you so much for coming along on the ride. Bestselling author Eliza Knight has been incredibly prolific over the past 20 years. She self-publishes historical romance novels, and she publishes traditionally, both historical fiction and contemporary thrillers. Her latest historical novel, Lost in the Summer of '69, just came out on June 9th from Sourcebooks, and TRADWIFE, a thriller published under her pen name Michelle Brandon, is coming out on August 4th from HarperCollins. TRADWIFE will be her 99th published novel. I know, it's mind-blowing. So on my pitch form for the podcast, I have this checklist that says, check any of the following that apply to you and or your writing or publishing journey. And then there's a list of about a dozen things like wrote multiple manuscripts before landing an agent, parted ways with an agent, had a book die on submission, had a book not make it through acquisitions, and so on. Eliza was the first person to pitch me who had checked every single box. So yeah, I knew I needed to have her on the show and hear about her long and twisty and wildly prolific publishing journey. Before we continue, a quick personal note that I absolutely adore making this podcast, and it's really important to me that I try to reach as many listeners as possible. I know there are writers out there struggling on their own publishing path who could really use the advice and encouragement and the sense of community that this show offers. So if you enjoy The Long Road to Publishing, please do spread the word on social media or to other authors. I really appreciate it. And now on with the episode. I'm calling this one 99 Books and Checking Every Box. Eliza Knight is an award-winning USA Today and international best-selling author of dozens of novels. Her latest novel, Lost in the Summer of '69, comes out on June 9th. A lifelong history obsessive, Eliza's love affair with the past began as a young girl when she traipsed the halls of Versailles. She is the creator of the popular historical blog History Undressed and host on the History, Books, and Wine podcast. Her books have been translated into multiple languages, and most recently, her co-authored title, A Day of Fire, has been optioned for television. Knight holds an MFA in creative writing from Drexel University and is a creative writing instructor. She lives in the Sunshine State with her husband, 3 daughters, a dog, a crab, and a turtle. Welcome to The Long Road to Publishing, Eliza.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here with you.
Yes, I'm so excited. I think I told you, but I have this checklist on my pitch form of have you experienced any of these detours or bumps on the publishing road? And you were the first person who checked every single box. So I was like, okay, obviously, we need to hear about all of those. But before we get into the whole saga, you have this new book coming out. So do you want to give us a little elevator pitch of what it's about?
Sure. So, Lost in the Summer of '69 is a multi-generational story about 3 women, all who are going through this wonderful summer of 1969, the fabulous concerts, trying to find out who they are and who they used to be. And it's sort of just like an epic family saga with music and a road trip.
Oh, that sounds so just like cozy and fun and a great summertime book.
Thank you. I think so too.
Okay, so this is where we are now. This is, you've had lots of novels out at this point, but I do want to go back in time and see if you can remember when you first got serious and decided, I'm going to write books and try to get them published.
So I know that a lot of authors say, oh, I've been writing since I was a child, which I have that story too. I was first published in 3rd grade in a charity anthology. But at that point in time, it was, just something that was just part of me and something I did for fun. And I did go to school for journalism, so I did want to be a writer in real life, but I thought, it would be more like sort of like op-eds and articles and things like that. But I really did not enjoy going into the end of my sophomore year. I wasn't enjoying that. I ended up switching majors. But it wasn't too long after I had graduated, maybe about 5 years, where I thought, you know what, I actually still really love writing and I want to get back into it, but I think I'm going to do something that's not so factual, which is ironic considering I've written a number of biographical fiction novels.
Ah,
But I really got back into writing in 2006. So I started taking a lot of writing classes and entering contests and things like that. So it's been actually 20 years.
oh, wow. Wait, so when you switched your major from journalism, what did you switch it to?
I ended up doing family studies. I had been taking some family studies classes as my electives, a lot of like relationship type classes, and actually what I ended up having a concentration is like family relationships and couple relationships. I thought I might want to be a therapist, like a family therapist. And I didn't end up doing that either. I ended up working in mental health for a little while, helping people gain employment in the workforce. So totally different, but
Yeah.
I feel like I don't have any regrets because that degree actually plays so much into so many of the novels that I've written, where I concentrate on family dynamics or, mother-daughter relationships and things like that.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I feel like that could be really helpful when you're writing about families and writing about relationships, which so many novels, that is what you're writing about. So,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah. So you'd been out of college about 5 years. You started doing some writing, and then at what point were you like, I'm going to write a novel and see what happens?
So it took about 2 years of writing short stories, writing some novellas, and entering contests before I actually got my first contract. And that was in 2008. And it was a romance time travel. I had first started out writing thrillers, but I wasn't sure that's where my skill set, I entered a contest and they like obliterated me. And now looking back on it, I would tell a new writer, don't let that like slash your dreams because, we all start somewhere. And I was
Yeah,
just a
yeah.
new writer. But I ended up winning a contest with a romance short story that sparked me getting a contract.
Oh, okay. So you won a short story contest, and then you say you got a book contract kind of based off of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting. Did you have an agent at that point, or this was without an agent?
That was without an agent. It was a small e-press, and that's where got my first start. I think I had about 7 stories with them. And my very first agent, who's no longer my agent, actually read one of those short stories and offered representation. But we were only together for about a year and then parted ways. And my current agent, I've been with her since 2010. So
Okay, so yeah, I already know that was one of the check boxes. You had to part ways with an agent. Okay, so let's go back to you wrote this romance time travel for a small ebook press that you had gotten this contract through a short story, which is a very interesting turn of events. And how did that go? Like going from writing short stories to all of a sudden now you have a contract and you have to write a novel.
So it wasn't that difficult. I find actually even now that writing short stories is harder than writing novels because in a novel you get to kind of just like, really dive in and examine all the different facets. You get to put in all the descriptions, you get to really develop the characters and the story, and you can have subplots and all those fun, juicy parts. Whereas with a short story, you have to really keep it simple. I actually used to teach a class called KISS, which was Keep It Simple, Stupid, and that's how to write short stories because it helped me like frame. A lot of my early writing was short stories, and it helped me frame those. But it's so much harder because you have to be very strict with what you put into it to keep it in that page count.
Yeah. Yeah, I find now because I used to write short stories when I was getting my MFA, and now that I write novels, I'm like, how I don't even know how to write a short story anymore. But I think maybe all of my ideas are novel ideas, so they're just they're bigger ideas where I'm like, how can I write it in less than 100,000 words? I don't
It's
know.
so hard. It really is.
Well, yeah, so tell me what happened that you had this ebook and then did you do more books with this press?
So I had about 7 titles with them, and then I went with two other e-presses as well. One was a Harlequin e-romance press, and another one was called Alora's Cave, and that went defunct. But I had about, I think in total, I would say maybe 15 or so titles with the 3 different small presses within 4 or 5 years, something like that. But at the same time, people were starting to self-publish, and I was very interested in what that would look like. So it was around 2010 when I first got interested in it. And so I asked for the rights back from a few of my short stories, and I then published those myself. And what was the catalyst for that was that I just wasn't making when you're with an e-press, there's not a lot of promotion that's put behind it. At least there wasn't back when I was with them. So the royalties are not great. And so you put all this work in and then you get your royalty check and you're like, okay, now I get to go to Starbucks this week, I guess.
Mm, yeah.
And so I was like, well, let me give self-publishing a try. And I did, and I found quite a lot of success in that. I ended up self-publishing probably 50 romance novels on my own, and it was really successful for me to do that.
Wow. Okay, so you're doing a lot of writing, and I'm just going to try to understand how you're getting all of this done. So you wrote 50 romance novels that you self-published over, sounds like a fairly short amount of time. Were they pretty short? Were they more like novella length?
No, so some of them were novella length, and then some are 60, 70,000, some are 100,000. I was really fortunate that I was able to pretty much from 2010-ish work full time as a writer, and I've been always very good about time management. So I am very strict with myself. I sit down every morning. I have to meet my word count, and nothing else comes before that. It has helped me be able to write so much. So I usually write around 3,000 words a day. I only do it 5 days a week because I like to have a weekend unless I'm on deadline. So that helps because I can write, 60,000 words in 1 month. They're not always great. Trust me, my magic comes in the revisions, but I can get those words down on the page to actually then work with them.
Yeah. Well, so you said you were pretty successful with the self-publishing. Do you feel like it was in part because you were able to produce so many, or what do you think were the reasons why you found success with the self-publishing?
I think there's a number of reasons. One, obviously, being able to produce a backlist fairly quickly that people could then binge through was pretty ideal. Second of all, I got started in self-publishing before it was really a thing for historical romance. So I was one of like a handful of historical romance authors that were doing it. And because of that, we were able to price lower than publishers. Now, I don't do 99 cents. I've never been a 99-cent author. I always price my books 4.99, 5.99. But that's still cheaper than a traditional published ebook, which is, $12 a lot of times. So I gained, I think, a lot of popularity that way because I was priced at a much more decent cost and I was still putting out a relatively good product, I think. Also, I've been really good with social media. I was on MySpace before like Facebook was a thing.
Yeah.
Learned to promote myself fairly early on. I think because I was with an ebook press so early, that's where you did a lot of your promotional work was on social media. So I think I got a handle on that side of things fairly early, and that helped me build a good following. Also, I've always found that for some reason, romance authors are at the turn of like every new thing. Like we're there in the beginning, learning how to do it quickly and sharing information. So any new promotional type thing that came across, I was always willing to risk whatever to try it and see what happened. I think that is partly why I
Yeah.
had such early success.
Yeah, that it does seem like romance authors are always on the cusp of the new
Yeah.
thing. I don't wonder what that's all about. Did you so most of these books were historical romance as well. So were you also having to do research along the way?
So yes and no. Like I did a lot of research early on. I traveled to Scotland and went to all the different castles that I was writing about. I learned a lot about Scottish history, read a lot of nonfictions, also went to museums, things like that. So once you have a baseline, you kind of have that baseline knowledge pretty much forever as long as you continue studying it. But for each new book, for example, I just finishing a draft this past month, I still had to research the time period one more time to make sure I know exactly what's going on, or like this specific battle I haven't talked about before. So I better make sure I know what the details are of this battle. So there's still some research that goes on, but if you're writing about the same time period and part of history, you kind of have like a little bit of a baseline.
Okay, this is so interesting. So you are at this point are just you're a writer, you're self-publishing at a pretty quick pace. But I know that also you have traditional book deals. So where did that fall in the mix?
My first traditional print book deal was in 2014, and it was a Tudor court novel, so historical fiction. It's called My Lady Viper. And that book took me actually 5 years to write. I started writing it in 2009. And that took a lot of research. And plus, it's a totally different medium than romance, which can sometimes be a lot more formulaic with, the progression of the romance. That's the whole point of the novel is the focus on this couple versus with a historical fiction, it might be the character's journey and also the history itself is a character in the novel. So they take a little longer. My next one after that only took a year, but I have often worked on multiple books at the same time. So I was working on that Tudor novel at the same time I was writing, the romance novels, and it's continued that way. So I've had always had the two since 2014 genres. And then last year I added in a revenge thriller under another pen name. So now I'm sort of juggling three different genres, and it's a little tighter now.
Oh my
But
gosh.
my kids are also older, so I have less mom things to do, which is, I kind of filled that space. Like I remember when my kids went to school, people were like, "Oh, what are you going to do when your kids go to school?" And I was like, "I don't know, I'm going to have free time." And but you fill that space, and I think it'll be the same when they, are all out of the house. I'll just fill it.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, both my kids are now for the first time in school because I have a kindergartner and a third grader.
Yeah.
And I'm like, where does the day go? Yeah, you totally fill it up. So I understand that. Although it really sounds like you have a lot that you're doing. So yeah. Okay. Well, so then, you were self-publishing, but then I'm guessing that for this Tudor historical, you had to get an agent for that. So were you querying that? And tell me about that.
Yeah, so I started writing that novel with my first agent, and she wasn't really enjoying it too much, which that happens, and that's what, you have a good agent if they really are behind your book and they're your first fan, right? So I quickly realized she wasn't a fan of that novel, and so I didn't think that was going to work out because I loved the novel so much. And I was really fortunate. I had a friend in a local writing group that I belonged to who said, you know what, my agent loves historical fiction. I bet this would be right up her alley. And so she facilitated a meeting for me with my current agent. And we chatted on the phone. She read the novel and offered representation. And then I subsequently sold that book to Lake Union, which is an Amazon imprint.
Okay. And then, so then it sounds like you're kind of doing the self-publishing, but then you're also writing these other books that you're pursuing for traditional publishing. And so is it more like the historical fiction is what you're doing, the traditional publishing, and the romance is the self-publishing?
Yeah, that's definitely it now. I did have a romance contract in 2019 for a series that I sold called Prince Charlie's Angels. I love that series so much. I wanted to see if I could bring in more readers with distribution, and it didn't end up being any different than what it was when I
Hmm.
with romances for myself. So that was the last romance contract I did, but all of my historicals are typically traditionally published.
Do you find, and maybe I don't know if you even know, but do you find that like people who are reading your historical fiction, are they finding your romance ebooks and reading those, or is it just two totally separate audiences?
It's really interesting because my romance readers read pretty much all of my historical fiction. They love them too. They're a wide variety of genres that they read. But the historical fiction readers, it's probably like I would say 50%. 50% of them are diehard historical only. They don't like the romance. And then every once in a while, I'll find someone that's like, oh my gosh, you also write Scottish romance? I'm going to go read those. I love Scottish romance. And they get very excited. So it's definitely a different audience, but every once in a while, there's
There's
people
some
that love
overlap.
them. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. Do you even know at this point how many books you've written in total? Like,
I do. And I only know that because usually I just tell people like, oh, it's over 50 or it's over 80 or it's close to 100. But I said that to a reporter recently for a magazine I was interviewing with. And then they were like, well, can we actually have the real number? And I was like, oh man, so then
gotta go count
you
it
gotta
up.
go count. My book, TRADWIFE, that comes out in August, that'll be my 99th published title.
Wow. Yeah, well, so now I read your bio and it says dozens. And I'm like, no, no. You're almost to 100 here.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess yes, technically dozens, but
Yes.
wow, how do you, I mean, I don't know, how do you keep coming up with ideas? How do you feel like you can keep things fresh?
So, I have a running list of ideas. I'm pretty sure that I'll never be able to write everything that I want to. Right now, I'm working on four things right now, not at the same time, but like I'll pick and play with them. But I have a list of like 20 other novels that I want to write. I don't know if I will get to. I have many that are partially written that I haven't been able to get to because, contracts or deadlines, or maybe it's just not the right time for them. So I've had to put them on hold. So the idea part is never a problem for me. I have a very overactive imagination. I play this game where I'm driving, and if I see like a trash bag on the side of the road, I'm like, okay, that's a body. And now I've just figured out like what happened to this person. It's just garbage. But like my
Yeah.
brain does stuff like that. Or if like a bird flies by, I'm like, okay, and now like I have this whole story for the bird. Yeah, I think I'll never run out of ideas, which is lucky for me.
Yeah, that's a nice feeling. I mean, I guess then the problem is just time. So you're
Yes,
like, I just don't have time to write all of these things that I have
yes.
ideas for. With the self-publishing, how much do you hire out for that? Do you hire an editor for that? Do you hire a cover designer? What's your process like for that?
Yeah, so I treat it like a publishing company. I actually did form a publishing company. I trademarked my name, all of that stuff. So I really do treat it like a business. So I write my novel the same way I'd write any novel. And then just like my publisher, that I have an artist who designs the cover. I have a program that actually does the formatting so that I can, plug it in there. It's called Vellum, if anyone is looking for a name of that. It's great for formatting books. And then I have multiple editors. So I have a developmental editor that reads my books. And then, I have a line editor. And then I also have a proofreader just to make sure that I didn't introduce more errors as I was fixing things. And then I also have a beta team. So it goes out to about 5 different readers who get the novel almost every time. And it's the last line of defense before it goes out. And then I also have a street team, review team. So they each get a copy of the book a few weeks before it's released. And then when the book comes out, they're able to like share it with, share their review with the world that they liked it. It's sort of like a NetGalley, I guess, what a lot of people, publishers will put a book up on NetGalley for early reviews.
Hmm.
But I've only used NetGalley once as a self-published person. It was out of the price range for me.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
do upfront all of those costs. So
Yeah, but I mean, it does sound like you've got all the steps and
yeah,
it's a whole process. Yeah, because you were saying like on deadline, and I was thinking that for your traditional books, but it sounds like probably for the self-published ones as well. You're like, I've got to get it to, my beta
yeah,
readers. I've got to get it to my copy editor and all of that.
yeah, absolutely.
Well, I guess I have two questions. One is, when you first started out with self-publishing, did you have this whole process, or was this something you kind of figured out as you went along?
So it's sort of something that I figured out as I went along. I was lucky that the early books that I did self-publish were already pre-edited with, with the publisher that I was with. So I knew they were good. And then I, dabbled with creating my own covers at first because I didn't know anyone. They were horrible. Never done that again. And then you quickly find out like who's an artist. So one of my really good friends who was also a romance author, her day job was a digital designer and she taught digital design at college. And so she was like, I think I'm going to start a cover design company. And I was like, I'll be your first client. And she did so many of my covers. And you slowly discover like people in that area as the business grows and as the industry grows. I was there right pretty much from the beginning. There's just a plethora of people that have these talents that they weren't able to use before that are now available, which is really awesome.
Yeah, well, and I guess I was thinking too, you kind of got in, I wouldn't say at the beginning of self-publishing, but earlier, and now there's so many more books being self-published all the time. Do you feel like that doesn't affect you because you already built a name for yourself, or do you feel like you are seeing the sales struggle because there's so many options?
Back in the day, 15 years ago, it was a lot easier to sell books because just wasn't as many. And now there's many. And then there's also a lot of pricing thing. People are doing the 99 cents or Kindle Unlimited, things like that. And so there's a lot more competition. I am lucky that I do still have a pretty large following. So when I do have a book that comes out, I still, reap back the money that I put out for it and then can, sustain myself on an income. But I think if I were starting today, it would be even harder because I didn't have that early growth with readers.
Yeah, well, and I was thinking too, you really do need to charge more for your books because you're putting so much into it. You have this whole process and all of these people that you're paying. But then hopefully when people take the chance and they buy your book, then they realize it's a very high quality product because it's, gone through this whole process. Well, so we've talked about your self-publishing. We've talked about you publishing with the, small indie ebook press and the trad publishing. I know that you have also had a manuscript die on submission. You've had a book not make it through acquisitions. Do you want to talk about any of those experiences on the traditional publishing side?
Yeah. So, even when you have traditional contracts, you still get rejected all the time, like even from your own editor. So that happens to me a lot still. I'm with two houses right now, and they have each rejected me multiple times before picking up another idea. So that's something that happens a lot. In 2011, I had a novel that went all the way to the editorial board, and the editor called me. She said, "We're going to offer you the contract." I got very excited. And then the next week, I think I was, waiting for the contract. She said, actually, sales said that we're not going to buy this book because it was a medieval romance. And they were like, sorry, medieval's dead. Would you be willing to rewrite it as a Regency? And I was like, the whole like plot of the book is medieval. Like I be a whole new book like that. I could write a Regency for you, but it wouldn't be this book. There's no way. It's just not the story would not be there.
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah, so that was my really disappointing back then, 2011. And also part of the reason I was like, well, I've already self-published a lot of these books I'd gotten the rights back on. I ended up self-publishing that one too.
So was
But
that kind of one of the impetuses to be like, maybe I'll self-publish?
yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Yeah. So I want to go back to something you said. You said, you're with two different publishing houses that are like currently publishing books of yours. And so I guess that means that they have like first right of refusal for your next book in that genre, right?
Yes.
But you're saying that you've had it happen multiple times where you're like, okay, here's my next book, and they don't want it. Is
Yes.
that, yeah. And
Yeah.
then what do you do then? Does your agent try to shop it around to other places?
So I had a couple of years ago, my editor actually retired. And so I was passed to another editor, and she didn't want the next book in the series. And in that case, my agent did shop it wide, and I ended up at a new house, which I was really excited about. And then with that current house, after that book, they were like, no, we don't like this idea, but we'd like to see something else. So then you come up with another idea. And I'm fortunate to be at a part in my publishing career where I don't have to write necessarily the whole book, just parts of it for them to see whether or not it's going to work. But that still doesn't mean that they'll take it. So that's happened a bunch of times with, both houses because they're looking for like that really high concept idea that's going to like spark something in a reader.
Yeah, well, and I wonder if this is, I don't know, I'm just thinking about for myself, sometimes I don't actually know what the book is until I've written the whole thing.
Mhm.
And so even this, although it sounds good of like, oh, you only have to write part of it and then they'll decide if they like it or not. But do you find sometimes it's hard to just write part of a book and still kind of give them a good idea of what it's going to be?
Yeah, so with Confessions of a Grammar Queen, which came out last year, that's the one where I had started like plotting it out and we pitched it to my editor and she was like, I don't think so. I did go ahead and write the whole thing, but my agent had said, just send me 100 pages and we'll try to sell it that way. But I was having such a good time without a deadline. And I was so into the story that I was like, I've actually finished the whole book. So here you go. And we ended up sending it out on submission a couple months later after we went through some rounds of edits together. And then with that same editor, I ended up just writing a page for my book, Lost in the Summer of '69. But I had such a clear idea of what I wanted that book to be and was able to get it through on that pitch. Pretty much nothing changed from pitch to the end of the book, except for one part, which is I had a rocker in the book who ends up my grandma heroine and him have a little bit of a moment. He was too young originally, so I did end up making him older. But I that was like the biggest change that happened in that one. But it was interesting how that story did remain the same because I do too like change things tremendously. It happens.
Yeah, well, and I guess it's book by book too. Like some books you have a really clear probably idea of the whole thing, and other books are more like I have to discover the story as I go along. And so, yeah. Well, will you just tell us a little bit because I know I read the description of Confessions of a Grammar Queen and I haven't read it, but now I really want to because it dovetails nicely with this podcast. I feel like, will you just tell us a little bit about what that book is about?
Yeah, so Confessions of a Grammar Queen is about a young copy editor named Bernadette Swift, and she works in New York City as a copy editor at a publishing house, and she is sort of like right in the center of the boys' club of publishing. Back then, it was a male-dominated career, which is funny because now it's mostly female-dominated.
Yeah.
But she has aspirations of becoming the first female CEO of a publishing house, and there's a lot of people standing in her way. And so she ends up talking to her friends. She joins a feminist secret book club that takes place after hours at the New York Public Library. And it's all women's from all walks of life, lawyers, nurses, homemakers, artists, secretaries, everything. And they talk about what happens in the workplace and ways that they can, sort of like manage things that are going on, and then also how to ask for raises or behavioral changes or I don't want to cook dinner tonight type thing from home. And with that, she kind of gains the confidence to ask for things for herself. And she also has a Great Dane. Who is her companion in the city, and we get some of his point of view in the novel as well.
Oh, that's cute. Yeah, no, it was making me think, well, first of all, I love any book set in the publishing world. I just find it fascinating. But I'm currently reading, I think it's a nonfiction called Middlemen, and it's like
Oh,
how literary agents shaped American fiction or something like that. I'll put the actual title in the show
yes.
notes in case I'm getting that wrong. But it's like the history of literary agents and kind of the history of the publishing industry. And yeah, you kind of get the sense of how it used to be, yeah, this total boys club, total, well, and I think there's still a lot of like lunching that goes on, but like the
Yeah.
martini lunches and everything. So I don't know, I think that whole like history of the publishing industry is kind of interesting.
It's really fascinating.
Yeah, yeah. Is there anything you can think of like any detours or like times when you felt like you needed to pivot or try something different because something you were doing just wasn't working?
Yeah, so there's a couple different times that that's happened. I started my historical fiction career as a biographical historical fiction author. And so what that means basically is that each of the books I had written was about a real person through their point of view. I wrote a book about Adele Astaire. I've written one about Marilyn Monroe and Ella Fitzgerald with my writing partner, and, Nancy Mitford, who was an author. I mean, I've written about a dozen or so historical biographicals. But I really wanted to change myself. Those books take a long time and a lot of research, and they're very niche novels as well. So I wanted to try to expand into a more creative realm for myself, and that's when I came up with the idea for Bernadette Swift. With the Confessions of a Grammar Queen. And she is inspired by women in publishing history during that time period. So I did get inspiration from real life, which is something I think with all of my novels are inspired partly by things that happened in real life. But that was a huge shift for me going from having someone's diary that I've read or letters or, read a biography written about them to generating a character that is totally from my imagination. And it was difficult, but also really liberating and fun. So I really had a great time doing that. And Lost in the Summer of '69 is the same. I created those characters, the grandmother, the mother, and the daughter, and all that. But there are pieces of the book that took place in real history. I think that was a major pivot for me. And then also delving into the thriller suspense world was a big pivot
Yeah.
too. I, had started out in 2006 writing thrillers and then thinking I wasn't going to be good at it and to writing these revenge novels. The thing is, I have this like need to write unlikable characters. So all of my suspense and thrillers are extremely unlikable characters, and I have so much fun with that. It's much different than my historical fiction and romance where, there's hope and heartwarming things that happen with
Yeah.
heavier topics. Whereas in the suspense thriller, it's kind of like getting to dive into a whole nother part of myself or my creativity.
Well, it sounds like you also get to, yeah, get to try out different moods. Like what I guess, yeah, I was gonna ask you this earlier of when you sit down to write for the day, how do you decide what you're going to work on? And is part of it like, oh, I really feel like writing my dark and gritty, or I feel like writing my light and happy today, or
Well, it's funny that you asked that because I was working on revisions of a historical romance I'm finishing up right now. And I was chatting with one of my writer friends, and I said, I have to get back into the romance. I'm almost done. It's like my third draft. And I was like, I'm almost done. I'm really feeling the need for something dark. And she was like, you need to get murdery. Like, like this, like, so I definitely do have those moods, but like on a deadline, like I have to do the work first. And so I'm like really itching to like get back into a thriller after I finish this romance.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, interesting. I mean, I think it makes sense to be able to like, yeah, we're all complicated. We have different facets of our personality. And so, you've got that romance side, you've got that thriller side.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell me if there's any important part of your publishing journey that we have missed.
We've talked about so much.
I know. I mean, well, you've written so many books. Like it's hard to be we can't like in some of these episodes we kind of talk about each book, but we can't do that with you.
No,
Sorry.
we'd be here for 100 years.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, then I guess my next question is, what is something on this whole journey of writing books and publishing in different ways that has surprised you? And it can be a good surprise or a not so good surprise or one of each.
I think I'm constantly surprised that people want to read what I've written. You know, like any artist, like it's always a personal project when you're working on it by yourself. And then when you send it out into the world, you kind of get nervous, like, oh no, what are people going to think? Oh my gosh, they're seeing like deep inside my head. Like I put all these words on the page. And so when people actually pick it up and read it, still kind of mind blowing to me that and surprising that that is happening. And I guess I'm just like so grateful that I did take the risk early on in changing careers to become a writer because it's been the most rewarding job I've ever had. It's also probably the hardest job I've ever had, but I really love it and I feel so lucky that I get to do this like every single day.
Yeah.
It's just a dream. And so one of the things I always tell my girls is when you're thinking about what you want to do for a living, think about something that you love and see if you can incorporate that some way in your life to make money. Now, like I don't know what that could be. I would say like, okay, but if your joy is like picking up rocks or something, that maybe that won't work. But there's got to be someone out there that is making money just like with their rock collection. You know, they could be a gemologist or something like that, or what is a geologist too?
Geologist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I just feel like I would never want to say the opposite of that. Like, I feel like we all should be able to follow our passions and do things we're good at because that's what makes society better anyway, right? It's like everyone using the skills that they have and the joy that they have with those skills to bring, art and things to life.
Yeah. I end every episode with a tip for the road for our listeners who, they are mostly writers somewhere along the path to publication or beyond. So what tip do you have? And it can be about writing or maybe marketing or self-publishing or just anything that you want to impart to our listeners.
The thing I always tell people whether you're a new writer or you're an established writer, and it's a good reminder, is that just follow like the three P's and it's patience, persistence, and perseverance because we need all of those things. You know, it's a hurry up and wait business. And
Yes.
there's also that like cliched line of it's a marathon, not a sprint, which is also so true. But I think that the persistence is really the biggest thing that I have maintained. I have it tattooed like right here on my arm because the thing is that I've had so many writer friends that have gotten frustrated and then quit. And the thing is, sometimes things take a really long time. Sometimes the writing takes a long time. Sometimes the drafting, sometimes getting an agent takes a long time. Sometimes getting an editor takes a long time. Sometimes keeping your editor takes a lot. Finding those readers who are going to read you, reviewers. And so you have to just keep going. Like even in the hard times, if you need to take a little break and take a 24-hour morning period, whatever it is, that's fine. But make sure you're back at it the next day because there is no quit in this job. Like I feel like you just have to keep going even and find some friends that you can talk to during those times as well. I know I have my writer friends that I chat with literally every single day, and we tell each other the good stuff and the bad stuff. And it's nice for other people that have been through that or understand what you're going through that you can get that support from.
Yeah. Yeah, and I feel like I saw this recently where it was like make sure you have your like author group chat for the bad stuff. Like
Yes.
don't post that on online where everybody can see it. Save that for your group chat with your writer friends.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because then you have that support, but you can also really share the deep things that you're feeling, which readers don't necessarily care about.
Right, right. Where did you find some of your writer friends?
A lot of my current writer friends I actually found in the romance world, and a lot of them have shifted over to either women's fiction or historical fiction or are still in the romance world. And I had joined some Romance Writers of America, which I think is still around. I'm not sure. I also belong to Historical Novel Society, the Women's Fictions Writing Association, and Novelists Inc. Like, I feel like if you join those organizations and you go to local meetings and you go to their national conferences, you will meet people.
Mm-hmm.
There's always a first timers like workshop that you can meet other people that are there for the first time and or people that are will say, "Hey, did you, want to come get a drink with me or you want to go get some coffee?" And that's how you can meet a lot of your writer friends. And most of mine I met through that.
And all right, and I have one last question since I'm asking you where you met people. These beta readers that you have for your self-published books, where did you find them?
So a lot of them were actually super fans, and I had a VIP super fan group that I had started online, and I found most of them there, and they've just been with me for like 15 years at this point. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. And I'm sure it's like such a like mutually beneficial situation because they're like, yay, I get to read the new Eliza Knight before anybody else. And
Yes,
then you're like,
exactly.
yay, I get feedback that's super helpful because these are my actual readers. Oh, that's like
Exactly.
the
Yeah.
dream. Well, it's an incredible story and an incredible career. And it sounds like you're just going to keep going, churning out novels with all of your many ideas. So.
I've told my husband that there is no retiring for me. Like my retirement looks like maybe like one book every few years. I feel like that sounds good until I can no longer do it.
How many books are you putting out a year now?
I would say on average 3 or 4.
Okay. Yeah. So, yeah, when you get older, you can slow it down a little.
That's what I was thinking. I was trying to slow it down a couple of years ago. I was like, all right, I'm gonna slow down now. Then I was like, well, wait, now I want to write thrillers, so that didn't work.
It's a good problem to have lots of ideas and to have a publisher and to have a whole system for your self-publishing.
Well, and I am also really fortunate. I have a producer now for my podcast, so I'm not having to do a lot of that stuff. I'm just getting to read the books and chat with the authors. And I also hired one of my daughters as my social media. She's my content brand coordinator. So she doesn't do my social media for me because I've always wanted to remain authentic on there, but she creates a calendar for me that is filled with all the things that I'm going to post. And then she creates the actual like graphics or she'll film me doing whatever. So that's been really, really helpful as well.
Oh, that's awesome. And then
Yeah.
she can put that on her resume and
Yes, exactly.
ooh, when my girls get older, this is what I'm going to have them
Yes.
do.
You should. My oldest used to be my assistant, and she would also do my accounting work for me while she was in high school and college. She's graduated and now and has a full-time job, so she can't do as much for me anymore. But she's still one of my first editors. She reads through every one of my drafts. So
It's funny because my husband was saying the other day, he was like, "Oh, you should get AI to help you with your social media posts." And I was like, "No, I don't want to do that." And first of all, I said, "Well, first of all, I like doing it and I want to, I kind of want to do it myself. Like I understand that maybe that would save time, but I don't want to do that. But having like when my daughters are teenagers, having them help me with it, that I could get behind."
well, they know all the cool things that are happening, and she's followed a lot of like bookstagrammers and things like that, so she knows what readers are interested in seeing, and then we can create it together, and it's fun, and it plus like AI is like really bad for the environment, so we don't want to do that.
Yeah, yeah. No, I'm very much not into AI. Like I understand why he suggested it, but I'm like I was just immediately like, no.
No, get
No,
it out of
not
here.
doing it. But yeah, no, I appreciate you telling me about your daughters helping you with your social media and everything, because that's really it's really sweet and it's giving me some ideas too. So
Yes. And when they're, I mean, you could do this now. I used to have them when they were younger, about that age, like stuff envelopes for me, like if I was sending out bookmarks and things like that. So
yeah,
get
yeah.
them started early so they're just used to
Yeah,
it.
just used to being an assistant for mom.
Yes.
I like it. Well, thank you so much for being here today and telling us about your books. And yeah, I am excited to read Confessions of a Grammar Queen and also Lost in the Summer of '69 coming out soon. And you've got many, many books for us to check out. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to The Long Road to Publishing. Many of the books we discuss on the podcast can be found at my bookshop shop, the link for which is in the show notes. My guests' books and many of the resources we discuss on the show can also be found in the show notes. You can find me online on Instagram, Blue Sky, and Substack with the handle Eva Langston. Even better, subscribe to my free newsletter for writers at evalangston.substack.com and feel free to send me an email. The podcast address is longroad.pub@gmail.com. The Long Road to Publishing is produced and edited by me, Eva Langston, and the intro-outro music comes from the artist's sound roll on Upbeat. Be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to the show, and I'll be back soon with more publishing stories and more tips for the road.